of hard work to maintain a careful balance. The city authorities had done their best to stay visible without being seen as threatening. The number of patrols by the watch were increased, especially in the popular areas frequented by foreigners, and gradually people had started to feel safe again. There were still areas of the city that no tourist or merchant ventured into, and the watch only made brief sweeps, but it had always been that way. As she passed a squad of the watch, KATJA noticed the sharp lines of their uniforms, the pride in their step and the keenness of the officer's gaze as she swept the street for trouble. The Yaskani queen, Morgans, had brought in a number of new policies as soon as the war ended. Soldiers in the army and members of the watch now received much better equipment. They also benefited from intensive weapons training in several disciplines, and their wages had increased. As expected, there had been a surge in the number of applications to join the army and the watch, but only the best were accepted. And only the most capable and intelligent of those were able to apply to join the Guardians, the elite investigators. Queen Morgans could not build walls around Perizzi, her capital city, which was renowned for being open to all, but she would not be caught unawares again. The visible changes on the street weren't subtle, but KATJA knew there were a number of other less obvious policies being implemented. As the busiest port in the world, a river of goods and, more importantly, information flowed from the docks throughout the city and beyond. There were now more spies of all nationalities spread out across the city and the entire West than ever before. The moment the war ended and the official documents were signed, merchants were keen to get on the road again. It had been the perfect disguise. KATJA had been among the first group of agents to arrive in the newly liberated Perizzi with merchant wagons from Seveldrum. As an agent for Seveldrum, all of KATJA's information went directly to Rosa, the local head of the network. Last time Seveldrum hadn't done enough to prevent the war. Rosa had made it very clear it wouldn't happen again, and that those orders came directly from the top, from Queen Talandra. This was KATJA's first assignment, and so far it had been uneventful. Most of her time had been taken up with establishing the business and convincing everyone that she was who she claimed to be. As far as most people in the city knew, she was Perizzi's first religiously independent director of last rites. It was a position which gave the Seveldrum network a unique insight into any unusual deaths in the city. It also provided her with a good reason to travel anywhere in Perizzi without it looking suspicious. Her pale skin and black hair marked her as Yaskani, which made it easier for locals to trust her. Only a few knew she'd been born and raised in Seveldrum. Her loyalty was to her queen and the country of her birth. As she turned the last corner and the shop came into view, KATJA paused to look for observers, as a man had been following her a few nights ago. He always kept his distance and tried to stay out of sight, but she'd heard the scuff of his shoes and once caught a glimpse of his face from her eye corner. It suggested he'd received some training, or perhaps they were just skills learned on the streets. Whether innocent or otherwise, it didn't matter. She'd managed to lose him in the warren down at the docks and had not seen him since. Even so, it paid to be cautious and patient. Once satisfied that the shop wasn't being watched, KATJA crossed the street and went in through the front door. A small chime rang above her head as she opened and then closed the door. Summoned by the sound, a pale, gaunt man with wispy brown hair dressed in a hooded grey robe drifted out from the back room. "Greetings," he said with a friendly yet sympathetic smile before he saw it was her. The smile slipped and his normal, annoyed expression replaced it. She was sure that Gankel must question his decision on a daily basis about going into business where he had to deal with the living. He seemed much more comfortable with the dead. They didn't speak, or chew, or breathe, all of which annoyed him. "What took you so long?" "They thought I was